Okay, Michael, we are so silly because I have never had a guest in the same location as me. I do not know why we are not sitting next to each other at a restaurant, sharing a microphone and doing this interview together. This is just such a fun anomaly for me. So
It's funny you say that because I also, I do my own podcast and I've been scheduling some stuff. And I realized recently, I'm like, why am I scheduling these people virtually when I can literally go meet them, have coffee and record it in person, which is, I mean, the idea of being in person to record a show is awesome. The thing I think about it is control over the sound, though. If you're a control freak like me, I think I would kind of freak out a little.
well, Michael, we have so much to cover today. And we were talking offline about you were just a ball of energy. Your personality is contagious. I love chatting with you offline. And so I'm excited that you're actually on the show. And let's just dive into it. We're acquaintances, but I would love to become a friend. And you mentioned friend in a lot of your verbiage. And you implied that to me implies the importance of community. So can you share your journey and how you discovered that the key to success is through building relationships and networking?
Well, yes, absolutely. I will be happy to. The key to your own relationship with yourself is to understand that you are your own worst enemy and your own best friend. We have relationships with the different character traits, personalities, I suppose, that we bring with us. And if you're not living intentionally with that and you're not engaging with it intentionally, then they come up in many different forms. And what I discovered along my particular journey was that my relationship with fear had always been one that I was engaging with through my journaling, a lot of self-talk. I think I got that from my mom, who would talk out loud to her other personalities and engage with them, that she would give them sort of like, names about who they were, what they were doing at that time. And she would always be that voice inside my head. And she was always the counter to a lot of the things I would come up with, because I was one of those kids who would just, I would get in trouble. If I could think of it, I would do it. And I didn't even have to think twice about how. I was just going to grab things and go. And there wasn't a real fear for me in taking on those things. So my mother was always the voice of reason. Are you sure you want to jump out of that tree? Do you think that's a good idea? Maybe we should back that up a little and think this through. No, I'm all right. And then of course consequences. And I lived my life a lot by that code. As I was growing up, I was bullied severely in school, and I spent all of junior high and high school, almost all of it, navigating the hallways out of fear, trying to find my way around situations and trying to navigate towards safety. And out of that sense of frustration, I suppose, out of that very, very, very rough time period where I finally confronted myself in front of the mirror and said, enough's enough. If people aren't going to like you for who you are, then you be you 100% of the time, all the way. You've tried to change for this person, try to do that for that person, you name it. And if this is what life is going to look like, and I'm only 14, then I'm going to be me from here on forward, and everybody can, what off. So I didn't know. At 52, I looked back. I had a chance to reinvent myself yet again and pivot with my life. I had lots of experience from broadcast media, event production, you name it, PR marketing. And it was time for me to re-examine all of that. I'd poured my time, my attention, and my talents into other companies. And I really wanted to create greater impact. And all my friends and family said, you are fearless. You have all this energy. You go after anything you want. You always land on your feet. And I thought at the time it was lip service. And so what I decided to do was sit every single one of them down at lunch separately so they couldn't collaborate and ask them what they meant by that. And every one of them had a sort of story about a moment in my life when I did something, faced a tragedy, faced a moment, and took it on differently. And it occurred to me that I was approaching these things apparently differently than other people. And I began to examine my relationship with fear. And I was like, why am I fearless? Because I don't feel fear. I feel a little anxiety. I have some trepidation, some hesitancy around certain decision-making processes. And I discovered that my level of risk that I was willing to take was very different from other people. So I began to look at why. And it was because I had taken enough of them and took enough chances on me to know that as I moved into the future, I wasn't hedging bets. These weren't crapshoots. I knew what I was capable of.
A question.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, just so you talked about navigating in fear when you were in high school, basically, which, I kind of get. I had not quite the same experience, but I had some. I get where you're coming from on it. And but now you're talking about not having fear again. So you were a young child with no fear. You started with fear. What was the process of getting beyond the fear? Right. That's the thing I really want to understand is what led you and what did you do to go from being fearful again to back to your kind of young self of being fearless?
I think taking on things that are always at the edge of risk, always examining those places and those spaces where it looks like you might be uncomfortable and leaning into those things. And when I made fear my friend, when I looked at it and said, oh, I have a relationship with fear and he's actually my friend. He actually guides me and tells me how to look at things, what things I should be paying attention to. I wanted to give that back to other people to help them find out in terms of community, what you can do together with the additional perspectives and lenses of their experiences is so much greater than what you can do on your own. It also mitigates that risk because you have all that experience and all those perspectives of individuals other than yourself to help you look at the problem, the challenge, and the thing in front of you a little bit differently. And for me, turning situations into opportunities to change who I was just fit my dynamic. And I didn't know that I didn't realize there was skill sets I could impart. I didn't realize there were steps that I could offer, tips and tricks and advice, until I took a deeper look at it and realized I was doing it in a number of different ways. And then I could offer that back to other people. And
that's what I'm getting to is like, because it's one of those things where it's great, but what can we share with the listeners to say, hey, consider this, think about this, try this. To help them kind of, if they're on that journey of being fearful and fear is not their friend, what can we tell them?
Piggyback off of that, I also want to know how you turn friend into a catalyst for building community and for those, like turning fear into a friend, how that translated to your whole thing on community too. So sorry, 2-part question.
One, I use the 4 F's framework of making fear your friend, which is feel, foster, flip, and free. In that it is identifying what that fear is. That's really identifying where is it coming from? Why is it coming up? Foster is fostering a relationship with that fear by not only identifying it, but engaging with it through journal writing, regular meetings, drawing, vision boarding, vision mapping. Flip means you've now flipped that relationship and it's your job to invite your fear to participate in your future planning, in your ongoing life, and all of the things that you're doing. So that it's on this side of the table, the committee, the future-proof committee, if you will. And then free, you've now freed yourself from those fears because you've now got a set of tools to engage with this as you move forward. And you've taken the risk and the fear and the unknown out of it. And now you've put it in your pocket as part of a tool. The part of it that turns into community was when I realized it's my responsibility, it's my privilege to give this back. And what I discovered was when I began to share my journey with other people, the impact that it had was exponential. The more I shared, the more people could open up. The more people that opened up realized they could lean on each other in vulnerability and share their journey with each other and realize we're not alone. And as entrepreneurs, we always feel isolated in our journey trying to build our businesses. We are the only ones who really believe in our dream. It's very hard to navigate that space. And we have to be leaders too. And that's where I invite them to step into the leader part of themselves, which is share that part of your journey with others, collaborate with them on your fears and your anxiety and your obstacles, because you will discover that they're with you. They're right there with you. And the answers are going to be right there. And it's going to be easier go of it if you are willing to do that and create impact, by the way.
It's so funny. I have a dear friend who just does not do small talk. Like she's like, why have the small talk when you get so like her icebreaker is if you were in a therapy session, what would you talk about right now? And it's like, whoa, like that cuts right to it. Like you're gonna get to know somebody real quick.
I have to ask her, which therapist are we with?
Oh my and it's so funny because she's also very funny and like she says it with like a directness, but also like kind of tongue in cheek. But she has just built this amazing network of people because she's like, I'm going to cut out the weather talk. We're going to go right to the heart of it. And she's built this amazing community. So that's what it reminded me of. But speaking of that community and you being new to a town right now, how do you go about finding the right people to share your story with? How do you find that community?
Well, first of all, I do it on the podcast. I made a commitment to myself to talk about these things and my journey on both the Fearless Road podcast, where I get to interview other entrepreneurs and the intersection of fear in their lives, and Fearless Thinking, which is where I literally talk about my thoughts, like how my brain works when I'm faced with some of these things. Mainly because it's sort of an audio journal, I suppose. So for me, sharing my experiences and being vulnerable has never been something I've been afraid of. And what I've discovered is that if I'm the first to step up to that plate, others will open up pretty easily with you. And they feel more comfortable because the space I'm creating with my own energy and my own vulnerability allows them to be themselves. They can, you see them just all relax, take a moment and be like, oh, finally somebody stepped up. I don't have to be the first. And, and I don't mind. I've, like Joe, you probably understand this when you're being bullied and you know you're going to be out there anyway. If you're the first person to be self-deprecating, if you're the first person to sort of jump in and make fun of yourself, it just breaks the ice for everybody and makes the room calm down.
I never learned that one as a kid.
Oh, really?
As an adult, yeah, but it was a short spell being in the wrong school, and fortunately I was lucky enough to be big and strong, so I didn't get beat up. But you can still be beat up, emotionally when I was the kid that was trying to do good in school, and that was not cool. And it was a lousy couple of years.
It's so fascinating that you say that, because today's alpha generation and Gen Z doing good in school would never have been thought of as being nerdy.
Yeah, good.
When we were growing up, it was like, nobody wants to do good at school. Don't be a dork,
Yeah.
Michael, so suffice to say with all of this, the key to community and the key to being a successful solopreneur, even if we could go down that direction, is authenticity. And once you can be yourself, you attract community, you attract the audience that you want. Joe and I are going through this right now. Like I'm a trained marketer. For the longest time, it's like, play the algorithm. This is best practice for email, blah, 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 blah. And we finally were just like, enough.
No.
Enough. AI is fixing or changing everything. People are flooded with political emails, all these things. And so Joe and I had a heart-to-heart a few weeks ago. We were just like, let's just be ourselves. Screw the LinkedIn algorithm, all this stuff. And
hashtag screw the algorithm.
I saw your post. I was like, yes, 100%.
But we're just like, we have a lot to share. We have a lot of value to add, and we don't want to play games anymore. So I feel like, and we have attracted a lot of people since then just for being authentic. So that was a big takeaway that I had from you that solopreneurs can take away, is just be authentic, be yourself, and you'll attract the community that you should attract for your business, for your personal life. But the question I also had for you that you find important is just the idea of mentorship. So how can people go about finding mentors? How important is that in relation to community? Where do you stand on that?
Two things. One, authenticity is a practice. It isn't just being yourself. It's hard. By the way, there's a massive separation between us and the youth who already understand how to be themselves. They've had a brand persona since they've had a phone in their hand. They've understood what the messaging and the impact of that could be since they've had one. Our generation was told to leave our you-know-what at the door every time we walked into work. Every time we came anywhere, nobody cares about who you are. Just bring the version of you we pay you to have. So for us, it is a practice to find that voice. It is work to constantly go, well, who am I and what is authentic for me? And that's a great journey to be on, by the way. It is a wonderful thing to begin exploring, to find your real voice, especially when you're trying to bring it into brand and you're trying to bring it into messaging.
I'm gonna jump in and so you believe that Gen Z, and I don't know about Gen Alpha, but just let's say Gen Z is really bringing their authentic selves to the social media scene. That it's not. I mean, I see a lot of people.
I think one thing, they're not afraid to share and they're not afraid to put it out there, but they also are covering it up with all of these ideas of what perfection should look like, these ideas of what brand should be. And they don't have any guidance from us, right? They can't, because we never were authentic. We don't have the skill sets to do that. And so I think it's interesting that they're practicing in that sandbox before we are. They're out there trying so many different things and already getting the consequences and the results. So they have the data to make certain decisions that we don't. Most of us wouldn't risk it because we're like, well, I haven't been sharing my authentic self with others for a long time. I don't even know what that would begin to look like, and I don't feel comfortable doing it. And so for us, I think the step beyond there is a larger risk and a bigger step. So what I meant was they're more comfortable. They've already taken some of these risks. They know what the market will do. They know what the social media channels and those pages will do. But they also are familiar with the algorithms and the platforms better than we are. So they can, I feel like they could navigate it if they wanted to be authentic. Now, mind you, they're still on their own journey. They still have to find out who they are and what they want.
That makes more sense. Yeah, because I see a lot of this is just, oh, my life is perfect. And, it's not perfect.
It's a screen capture.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But
as far as mentorship is concerned, first of all, find anyone. If you want guidance and you want someone, it's always great to have an accountability partner, somebody that you can talk to. But when you're looking for a mentor, if you want to be strategic about it, look at someone who's 5 years down the road from where you are. Where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years? Where do you really see yourself going? And what does that goal look like for you? What kind of individual embodies that version of who you really want to be? And if you can find out who that is, and you can find people like that in your neighborhood, your network, or on LinkedIn, then I would say reach out to them and explain what your needs are. Explain that I believe I want to be where you are in 3 to 5 years. I'm looking for a mentor. I want someone to help guide me. Are you interested in participating in a mentor-mentee relationship? Now, these are not simple questions. These are not easy things to do. You have to be very intentional when you're bringing a mentee-mentor relationship into play, because you need to be proactive and engaging with that individual for the purpose of growth, personal and professional growth.
Yeah.
it's also the fact that you got to be really careful about who you choose as that mentor, because they can be someplace you want to be, but if the path that they traveled isn't a path you can go down. I mean, there's a lot of ways to be, to have a 7-figure business. And, I cannot tell you how many business ideas I had that I think would have done quite well that I said, I can't go that way. I can't do that, because it's just, it's either just not me, or it's too painful, or I don't feel right about it. So, yeah, but that's a really good point to look at that person, but then making sure that the path that they're probably going to take you on is going to be one that you're willing to go down.
I think that comes into play when you're talking about your value systems. And I think it's very good to establish what those are early on for entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs. You need to understand what your value systems are, moral, ethical, across the board. And if you can ask yourself 10 to 15 questions to help you better align yourself with those value systems, use those same questions for a mentor.
Yeah.
If they align with those values, then I think you're in a good place. Now, they may not align with your trajectory, right? But what I will tell you is it's easy to shift and turn a boat when you're traveling and moving than it is if you're standing still. So if you find someone, right, you can always move over to somebody that's better aligned with you. If you get started, it's better than not having any guidance at all.
Can you have unofficial mentors where you don't have this specific conversation? Because Joe, I would consider you a mentor of mine.
I think
I've never sat down and been like, Joe, you want to be my mentor?
Well, I think what we've begun to do is establish these, and I would lean into LinkedIn for this. We've already begun establishing professional relationships across different sectors with individuals that we don't specifically work with, but we respect what they do. And I believe that when you're looking at them and you're following them and you're paying attention to the kind of work that they do, the impact that they make, that's a type of mentor. Now, you may not be in an official mentor-mentee relationship, but you're gaining impact, you're gaining influence, you're gaining information and experience from that person's life. I mean, I'll say it right now. Brene Brown is a mentor for me. She doesn't know it, but one day she might. And, I've used her posts, her books, her writings, everything to help me in my life. That's mentoring from a place of was that passive education?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that makes so much sense. Well, so my question is, so community is valuable, having a mentor, official or unofficial, is valuable, authenticity is valuable. If somebody's like, I'm being my authentic self, but they're not attracting the right community, they're not attracting the right audience, they can't find a mentor, what are they doing wrong? What are some mistakes that people make when they're trying to pursue these areas?
It's a square peg in a round hole. This is why I stopped the train to get off. I was living other people's versions of success. I had to stop and reevaluate what I thought that meant. And from a place of authenticity, describe the kind of success for me that would fit my life model. If my messaging, if my marketing, if my branding, if my services weren't in alignment with my idea of what success looks like and my value systems and my authenticity, then yeah, you're not going to attract the right people. There's going to be something out of balance. So if you've got somebody who's already in the market, already doing something, already out there, but now wants to be authentic and those things don't line up, that's usually your first clue.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, then the second part of that I had was, so maybe some people are reaching out and it's not working. Some people might just be hesitant. They're like, I went out I'm a solopreneur because I like working independently. I don't need anybody. What advice would you have for them? Because we always say, no, like going solo in business doesn't mean you're alone. But you have those people that are like, nope, I could do it all. How would you counteract that?
Good luck. You're going to end up needing people. I'm sorry, you're going to end up needing people. I don't care who you are, whether or not you want to hide behind a screen and do data entry all day long. Wonderful. That's awesome. You want to be an entrepreneur? You're going to meet people. You're going to need staff. You're going to need resources. You're going to need networking. And eventually, at some point when you're ready to bring that idea, that little dream of yours, little baby to the world, you're going to have to engage with others. And not developing those skill sets is going to put you so much further behind than every other entrepreneur. And if you don't start now and realize it's valuable for you, you'll get there, but you may not be successful. And that's going to be hard. It's a very, very hard lesson to learn too late in the game after you've done all the work to bring that dream into the world, only to realize you don't have the other skill sets necessary to engage with others to get them excited about it.
Yeah. I mean, because you hear some people say like they want to be behind their screen, then they'll just use PPC to get the word out, and they'll use content marketing. They don't actually have to interact. But what's the saying? Like everybody's in sales, and mastering that craft, like you have to build those relationships and even just talk to your audience to finesse your product or service.
It's interesting. It's a muscle. And I'm actually working with a company right now whose CEO is like 19 and whose other co-founders, I believe, in late 60s. And there's this gap. And they want, I believe, my help to come in to help create a bridge between the voices of the young person who's got these brilliant ideas, but he's just not polished for the world, right? He hasn't had the time to get that polished. And it takes a lot of practice to work that muscle. And I guess I'll be sort of a mentor for that. If you're an entrepreneur, you're serious about being an entrepreneur, that is one of the things, that's one of the skill sets you're just going to have to work on. And I invite you to think about, if you're trepidatious about it, I invite you to think about it now, start slow, begin with people people you're already comfortable with, and begin branching that out a little bit further. But eventually you'll have to.
Do you have any concrete examples of how building a community and being your authentic self has helped you or a client of yours take your business to new heights?
I think there's a couple of innovative moments where there's a roadblock with a company executive I was working with out of New York, their entire executive team, and they were bringing a new launch for a new initiative with the city of New York. And the leader, the vice president, was holding pieces of information from her keynote speech to herself. And it was interesting because she was wondering why other people in their panel discussion notes, in their training sessions, just didn't seem to be on board. And I was like, well, maybe you need to share with them the vision. I mean, maybe why haven't you allowed them in? Well, they're not part of the decision-making process for that. And I'm like, but aren't they? I mean, it's going to impact them. And whether or not they're part of the team that makes the ultimate decision as to whether or not this gets out into the public, they're still on your team. And you haven't let them know you care. And you're not being vulnerable with them. And they sense that. So there's resistance. So we had a breakout session, kind of, you want to call it a breakout session, where I said, you're gonna do this in front of them before you do it in public. And you let them hear it. Let them weigh in. And she was a little hesitant about that. But what came out of it were some wonderful suggestions from the team she had not even thought of, because they had already been building relationships out in the community with other individuals. And they went, oh, so-and-so, what I was working with last week on this project would probably be a great partner for us to help us get the messaging out even further, right? Greater impact. When we work in a silo, when we think that we have the answers or we don't need to lean on other people, we We eliminate opportunity, we reduce opportunity, but we also hamper ourselves, right? We restrict ourselves from receiving additional information and perspectives that might be valuable to us to grow not only as a leader, but as an individual. And that greater impact always comes with collaboration and widening the group. Now, I get where decision making, you don't want everything to be done by committee. You don't want, I get that control. But in the ideation stage, in the innovation stage, collaboration with a lot of people is a brilliant thing to do. I can only have my experiences. I can only have my perspectives. But if I'm willing to bring others in fresh new ideas, perspectives and experiences, backgrounds, I'm just expanding the ability for success to happen.
Mm-hmm. So true. This is such a unique conversation. So my big takeaways from this interview have been to make for your friend, to be your authentic self, to find that community, and to find the people that inspire you, mentor you, motivate you. Would you say those are like 4 keys of success right there?
Yes, and I would add a little bit to the be your authentic self. Find your authentic self. Go on that journey. We may not know what it is. I'm always discovering new things about myself. It's a constant journey. I'm always changing. So for me, there's 32 different authentic versions of me that could show up at any time. I've had so many different life experiences that I have those facets to my personality, and those are okay. And I think being open to the idea of that finding your authentic self is a wonderful journey to embrace, opens you up to the possibility of meeting not only wonderful people, but one day meeting a beautiful version of you.
That's a great point to end on. I'm not going to ask any more questions after that, except for one that we ask everybody. But I'm going to let that moment just sit there. The only other question I'm going to ask, because that was so beautifully said, that was said so beautifully, unlike this sentence I just said. We ask all of our guests this question: what is your favorite quote about success?
Everything you ever wanted is on the other side of fear.
Is that an original? No,
I don't think so. No, I think I know I've read it or heard it from others, but I even have it on a placard, on a poster, because I just believe that that's the truth. That we place those fears in front of us, and what's on the other side, if we can move through them, are incredible versions of ourselves we have yet to discover. And when that person comes to light, when that person comes into the scene, it's the next great opportunity, the next great fear you're going to conquer, the next obstacle you're going to get over. And then on the other side of that is another great version of you and another great version of you. And it's just endless versions of you that can be born every second you go on the other side of fear. So, yeah.
I love that. My favorite quote is life begins outside your comfort zone. And so it's kind of basically same quote, same meaning, but different. So I can totally resonate with that. Well, so Michael, if people are like, okay, got to face my fears, I want to learn more about this, I want to overcome these challenges and be the best version of myself, where can people find you?
MichaelDeVousJr.com. And that's my last name, D-E-V as in Victor, O-U-S as in Sam. MichaelDeVousJr.com is my website. Or you can go at Fearless Thinking or at The Fearless Road, and you can find me through those channels. We're on Spotify, Apple, everywhere, and YouTube.
The Fearless Road?
The Fearless Road, yeah.
How often do people pronounce your last name correctly?
In France, all the time.
Yes.
But not here. Devious. I get devious all of the time. Yeah.
Devious.
Yeah. Yep. I had to ask. People pronounce my last name wrong all the time.
I can always tell when it's coming up. There's a small pause before they get to the Michael, and there's a small pause, and I'm like, I want to hear what is that? What do you got? What version of this are you going to have for me today?
Totally. Well, Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was just a really, I don't know, like, we cut to the core, and I really appreciate that, and that we got vulnerable, and that's always a nice thing to have in these interviews. So thank you so much.
It's a journey. We're on a journey together, and you guys are wonderful, and you're helping me step out as well with the
too.
Lifepreneur. I mean, the Solopreneur group and LifeStar, and this is awesome.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
I'm glad you're a part of it. And listeners, hopefully you feel inspired after that too. We are so excited that we were able to bring this to you today. I have to ask, please leave that 5-star review, subscribe to YouTube, subscribe to all the channels you listen to this podcast. We would so appreciate it. And then just wait a week and we will be back with another episode of The Aspiring Solopreneur. See you next time.
Bye, everybody.